Our next speaker keeps things simple, but her innovative work is part of a new food revolution. As a director of marketing and outreach for Local Food Hub, she knows that fresh, nutritious local food is just around the corner, promoting a local food system that values small-scale agriculture, land stewardship, and equitable food access. Please welcome Emily Manley to the TEDxUVA stage.
Hi, everybody. Today I want to tell you about a pretty special place that we have here in Central Virginia. Dickey Brothers Orchard is located in Nelson County, and it's one of Virginia's select century farms, having been designated as such for being owned and operated by the same family for 100 years. A more accurate honor for this orchard might actually be a 3-century orchard, because England's King George II granted the land to the family back in 1750. Today, brothers Tommy and John Brugiere are the 7th generation of the Dickey family to manage the orchard, and it produces about 15 varieties of apples and a range of other fruits and vegetables. Now, every year, Tommy and John go out and harvest about 60 to 70,000 bushels of apples, but yet they're still a relatively small-scale orchard in our state. By comparison, some of the largest orchards harvest 10 times that amount. And despite generations of business experience, there's one puzzle that continues to stump the family: what to do with undersized apples. So retailers and consumers generally prefer what's known in the business as #1 fruits, so large, perfectly shaped grocery store apples. But the smaller versions of the same varieties of apples never receive quite as warm of a welcome. Meanwhile, 50 miles down the road at the headquarters for the Charlottesville City School System, the nutrition director is working on a little puzzle of her own. She firmly believes that school food should be fresh and healthy, and her gut tells her that the best food she can source isn't the stuff that shows up frozen and processed and packed on the back of a tractor trailer. It's the fresh fruits and vegetables grown by the farmers in her community. But with 4,000 students enrolled in 9 different schools and about 95 cents per student to spend on lunch ingredients, there just didn't really seem to be enough staff time or money or energy to really make it happen. So just to recap, here in Nelson County, we've got a small family farmer looking for a reliable market for his small apples. And here in Charlottesville, we've got a school system full of kids who just happen to have small hands, looking for a reliable supply of local food. And in our current food system, it's virtually impossible for the two of them to connect. Our food system has changed dramatically over the last half-century. Corporate consolidation has led to the decline of many small and mid-sized family farms in favor of a high-volume, long-distance, industrial-scale system. Today, our food travels vast distances, averaging about 1,500 miles, and the production and processing of that food lies in the hands of just a few very large companies, giving them enormous power over the markets and pricing. Now, supporters of this system tout its ability to produce very large amounts of very cheap food. However, they fail to take into account the many hidden costs of this system, including environmental degradation and public health consequences, and the decline of rural economies and farmer livelihoods. So imagine for a moment that you're a small-scale vegetable grower here in Central Virginia. In addition to planting, tending, and harvesting your crops, you've got to spend 1 day a week preparing for the farmer's market, another day a week staffing the farmer's market. Maybe you have a CSA that you've got to manage. You've also got to market your business. You need to drive around town making sales calls and deliveries. Oh, and you do want to do your accounting duties because it would be nice to get paid. It's a wonder that there's really any time to farm at all, considering that most farm families have at least one member working an off-farm job in order to get steady paycheck and access to affordable health care. Or picture yourself as a institutional food procurement manager at a place like the University of Virginia or a public school system that serves 4,000 kids. Many of these businesses are not set up to handle the logistics of ordering from many individual farms in order to fill a single need. So if you need 900 pounds of potatoes a week for your cafeteria menu, sourcing those locally is going to require a pretty serious amount of legwork. And consider also that many of these institutions order from so-called broadline distributors, which deliver food, office supplies, kitchen equipment, cleaning materials, all with a single click of a mouse on the same truck. So what we've ended up with in this system is what we've ended up with in this country is a food system with a missing middle. On one end, it favors small-scale direct markets like farmers markets and CSAs, and at the other, high-volume industrial-scale production with very little room for anything in between. Now, don't get me wrong, farmers markets are a critical piece of our food system puzzle, but the 7,000 markets nationwide represent less than 1% of total U.S. agricultural production. And here in Virginia, we spend about $15 billion a year on food, and $9 billion of that is spent on food coming from outside of the state. So I think this represents tremendous untapped opportunity. What if we could shift that demand so that it was actually available to small and mid-sized family farms here in Virginia? What would it take to make that happen? So here's what I think. First, we need to rebuild our infrastructure so that it emulates certain industrial-style standards like efficiency and convenience, but is scaled to meet the needs of small-scale family farmers. This means a centrally located refrigerated warehouse with cold storage. And it means delivery trucks. It also means a skilled sales staff that understands the value of local food and knows the story of local farmers and can communicate those things to the buyers. And it means the systems to keep it all running, so liability insurance and food safety certification, accounting and sales software, and a marketing plan. With these systems in place, small farmers could sell their fruits and vegetables and meat and eggs for a fair price. The goods could be aggregated in order to fill high volume orders. And farmers would have the convenience of making a single large delivery of their produce rather than driving all around town making many small ones. So this could create a steady supply of local food, a steady demand of local food, and more profitable local farmers. Second, we need training and education. A shift to local food in the wholesale marketplace can pose challenges for both farmers and buyers. So farmers are suddenly faced with an entirely new set of standards. Growing specifications, harvest requirements. Food has to be picked a certain way and packed a certain way and must look a certain way, has to arrive at a certain time. So while we know that fair pricing and access to the wholesale marketplace are important, we also know that farmers will be more successful in that marketplace if they have access to regular training, technical assistance, and educational opportunities. On the flip side, most buyers are not actually used to working with local food. So it's not just about the basics of seasonality, although helping them understand that something like local peaches aren't available year-round. That's important. But it's about incorporating that seasonality into their menu planning. It's about helping them learn about the differences between industrial food and heirloom food, learning new varieties and new flavors, and understanding the value of investing in our small family farmers. So here's a little example about why this education and training and communication is so important. A few years ago, an institution here in Charlottesville made a commitment to purchasing all of their tomatoes locally when in season. I'm really excited about this. They thought they were making a big commitment in the local farming community. It was pretty easy. All they needed to do was make a change like that and make it happen. So the first delivery of tomatoes arrived, and they were beautiful, in season, ripe, juicy, perfectly ripe. And a few hours later, the food service director decided that this was never ever going to work. The problem was that the mechanical slicer they had come to rely on for processing this vast amount of tomatoes only worked with the hard, underripe, cardboard tomatoes that they were used to receiving from the regular distributor. These tomatoes, which were perfectly ripe and ready for eating, were actually too soft to go through the slicer. So had the buyer known to communicate this need to the farmer, and had the farmer been trained on how to harvest tomatoes for the wholesale market, maybe he could have adjusted his harvest schedule to pick them a few days earlier, and both of them would have had a much more successful transaction. So education and training can actually solve this kind of problem. So we need to rebuild our infrastructure. We need to invest in training and education. And finally, we need community involvement and support. So if we're going to compete with a system that's been propped up by government subsidies and corporate power, we need to commit to providing that same amount of support to our local farmers who are struggling. Rather than continuing to invest in a system that we know is detrimental to our health and our environment and our family farmers, let's commit to working together to building a new system that values the right things. So that means everyone in this room needs to make an investment in our local food system. And what that means is seeking out and buying local food in the places that you shop. It means demanding local food from your cafeterias and your restaurants and your grocery stores. It means supporting the organizations that are working on these issues in your region. And let's see. So if we do all of these things, if we make this investment in this system, we can actually see some pretty amazing returns. We can see economic benefits. If every family in Virginia spent just $10 a week on local food, we could see $1.65 billion reinvested into our community. We could see environmental benefits. If our farms are more profitable, it's more likely that their farms will stay farms and not strip malls or housing developments. We'll see health benefits. If we have better school lunches and healthier school food and better access to fresh fruits and vegetables, those are all key to a healthy food system. We could see increased food security. If we want to keep food production here in Virginia, then we need to make farming a viable career option. And switching our food system so that it values local food is the first step in that. And we could see some new partnerships. So a healthy food system is about more than just efficient truck routes and training and education. Bringing food production back to our community can mean surprising partnerships between schools and food distributors and food banks and nonprofit organizations. So this all sounds pretty compelling, right? Seems like someone should be working on this. Well, my organization, Local Food Hub, is one of several food hubs throughout the country that are pioneering these strategies in order to rebuild our food system. We believe that small family farms can connect to wholesale buyers in a way that respects their work, values their food, and affords them the financial freedom to do what they do best, which is farm. And we also believe that it is possible for wholesale buyers like the University of Virginia and public schools and grocery stores to serve fresh local food to their clients, customers, and patients. So 4 years into this whole thing, and we think we're making pretty good progress on this. As a community-supported nonprofit organization focused on making connections and building relationships, we're now buying food from more than 80 family farmers in our region, and we're selling that food to 175 local buyers, including the University of Virginia, 50 public schools, and a range of other grocery stores and retailers and caterers. Since opening our doors in 2009, we've put $1.6 million back into the community through purchasing. And we've donated 75 tons of fresh food to our neighbors in need through our partnership with the food bank. All of this translates into more jobs, better economic growth, farmland preservation, and a healthier, happier community of farmers and eaters. And just so you know, we also made sure that Tommy and John Brugier's apples ended up exactly where they belonged, which was in the hands of school kids throughout Charlottesville. In fact, since just last year, we've helped put 9 tons of those apples back into the school system. So that's how we think you connect farms, families, and food grown close to home. Thank you.